You know, communities get destroyed and like what's offered is like a museum or a documentary or like some dope art or like
you're like, my community has been destroyed, and they're like holding a camera to your face and like, talk to me.
yeah, and I'm not like sneak dissing artists or like art or like historians and things like those things matter. But I think like, you know, our goal is to like that to not be the case, right? And that requires us being really clear about what we're doing now and fighting right now.
You already know, it's your girl Naira, and this is Shit Talks.
Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Shit Talks. Air horn, air horn, air horn. My name is Naira. I have the pleasure of being y'all host. As always, we're going to be here talking about community benefit agreements. Did I say that correctly? Yeah. Did I leave out any letters? CBAs. We're going to be talking about the Obama Center. We're going to be talking about some stuff that's going on out south and the work that these lovely people are doing. But first, who the hell are y'all?
My name is Dixon Romeo.
And I'm Kiara.
Beautiful. What do y'all do, Dixon, Romeo, and Kiara?
We're members of the Obama CBA Coalition, and we're organizing to get a community benefits agreement in the form of a housing ordinance in Southshore.
We are members of Not Me We.
Right. Yeah, facts.
What the hell is a CBA?
In the context of our campaign, or just like
in general? What is a CBA?
So in general, a community benefits agreement is some sort of document, could be legal or not. A community benefits agreement is usually centered around a development, right? And it's around what the developer or the project is going to do to directly, you know, benefit community folks in writing, right? It's usually around like jobs and like requirements for, you know, environmental concern, like whatever the issue is that folks are raising. You know, to connect it to the CBA campaign, originally that was the goal of the coalition, right? To get an actual community benefits agreement that the Obama Center, the University of Chicago, which is the host of the Presidential Center, and the city of Chicago signed with the community, centered on not just jobs or environmental stuff, but also housing, education, and transportation. There, you know, historically, you know, Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor, who at the time was just super cool, awesome, regular Jeanette Taylor, which is not very much of a difference, right? Like there was a meeting that in 2018 that she went to, and she asked the former president directly about it, and he was like, I ain't signing that, more or less. And so the coalition kind of pivoted then to the city of Chicago being responsible to write laws and ordinances that do effectively do the same thing. And so that's kind of been where the campaign has been ever since. So it's still called the CBA Coalition because it's been going on since 2015, right? Like almost a 10-year campaign, but what we're actually talking about is a housing ordinance in city council. So it got filed, the current version got filed in city council by Alderman Desmond Yancey, right, this September. I think it's called like the Southshore Housing Preservation Ordinance or something like that, but it's all the CBA demands.
So what's the reason why there's any concern around the Obama Center being built, the creation of that space?
Why is it that we have to have something come to the community to add or benefit us? We pay taxes just like everybody else do. Why aren't we getting development without this institution coming, right? And I think that like we value the Obama Center because it's the presidential center, right? And not necessarily because of the tangible benefits that it will bring.
What I'll say is I think that you want like the short answer or the long one?
Whichever, we got all day.
So in 1776, no, I think like, but no, all jokes aside though, like I think this country is set up around the idea of like private property, and the extension of that means like owning, you know, it was originally us, we was the property, then it's all right, then it's like people, buildings, and then like the police exists as an extension to protect that, which is why, you know, when you look at, well, I ain't gonna get into all that, but I think like, you know, Black communities are deprived of essential like resources and development and things that folks need because of like structural racism and capitalism. And what neoliberalism does, we get offered and this isn't about the Obama Center per se, just like in general, any type of thing as a way to spurn the development or spurn the things that we need. I think there's two things. Like one, there's an argument about like what actually is an investment, right? I think a school is a real investment, right? I think that living next to, like having environmentally safe neighborhoods is a really good investment, right? I think community centers, right, are investments, mental health centers, right? Like all the campaigns that go on in the city now, right? And, I could also make an argument that when it comes to like real estate and development stuff, you could take the same materials in this building, right, or somewhere downtown, and if you drive them out to like some random field where nothing there, you plop them down, the value plummets. So why does the value plummet? Because of the location, the proximity to other things that other people have invested in, right? And so folks who live in South Shore, folks who live in Woodlawn, Washington Park, have deeply invested in our neighborhoods, right? Like we've made these neighborhoods what they are. And so these folks should be able to stand, if there is benefit, they should be able to stay and be a part to it and not be displaced and like have to further additional like burdens or cost. I lost the point there, but
no, you did.
I'm gonna spin back and say that I think the concern around the center is that whether people want it to or not, it creates a speculative force, right? So folks who before were not thinking, because of it brings more gravity to the area and makes it a new location, right? So now things that were not priced at that value, and you could argue they were already undervalued due to the market crash or due to the fact that it's a black neighborhood in the first place. But we know that in South Shore, for example, South Shore and Woodlawn are neighborhoods that are overwhelmingly renter neighborhoods. South Shore is like 77%, Woodlawn's like 80-something, right? Predominantly black neighborhoods. South Shore is like 95, Woodlawn's like 85. 85%, but despite years of the University of Chicago like gentrifying it, it's still 85% black neighborhood where overwhelming majority of folks struggle to pay their housing, right? Like over 50% of folks in the neighborhood. Over 50% of folks in the whole neighborhood are spending more than 30% of their income on housing. And so with the Obama Center there, if I own property or if I'm like in that market, I say, hey, I can now this is 3 blocks, 4 blocks, 1 block down the street right next to the Obama Center, and that gives me some space to raise the price, right? And so that negatively impacts
People who are already living there.
Yeah, everyone who lives there, even if you don't, and I really push this with folks who, like homeowners, like even if you rent, right? Like you're negatively affected by that because it's going to increase your property taxes, right? And, I think there's a facade around like the middle class and like black communities, but like I be knocking on people's doors and they have homes and they look nice on the outside. You get in there like, boy, you need your roof leaking a little, like no shade, right?
Yeah.
Like, right. It's like you too need the CBA.
Yes,
like let's talk about what's
exactly.
here for homeowners.
Don't fall into the illusion.
Yeah,
like,
people they be tapped in when I pull the sheet out. They're like, oh yeah, I need that. I'm like, right, you need more than people in the parkways. So like I think there's like that's the whole thing, and that's what we're trying to address, right? Like our ordinance is about not only renters, but homeowners and condo owners as well.
Yeah. So you talked about this, like, you're touching on this, folks being pushed out of neighborhoods, right? Something that's very specific to big cities with the demographics, like our city, right, is like gentrification, right? Like, which some people think is a lie, like, oh, it's making the neighborhoods better, but we have inside jokes that like, as soon as we see a Whole Foods pop up in a neighborhood, like, they're coming, or whatever the case is, like, oh, as soon as there's too many Starbucks, yeah, or something, like some type of movement, some type of movement is happening, right? And so when I think about that, right, and we think about this concept of gentrification, or this very real thing that's like happening in neighborhoods in Chicago, why is it that a housing ordinance is important? Like, why do developers and the city need to be held accountable in this way? Like, how is that specific to Chicago? Like, what's going to happen? Like, how are they going to push people out?
I really think it's more so the city than like because I mean, you can't make like the way that I see it, developers are going to develop. They're going, like, they're a part of the capitalistic society, a part of the machine, and they're going to do what it do, baby. And I think that the city as a government entity, it's accountable to us. And I think that because of that accountability, like, we as Black people have never ever gotten anything just by asking for it. And so like we have to put the demands, we have to put the pressure on like the people who we give our money to, because essentially we pay taxes. And by us paying taxes, it makes you responsible. And all of the documents that our city documents, including the budget, is an accountability like it's a document that holds you accountable. You said you was gonna spend the money on this. Some of the stuff in there, I'm like, why do y'all? I don't know why you spending the money on that, but you know, if that's what you said you go spend the money on, like let's see, you know what I mean? Let's see. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that like even you're right. Like people do pay taxes, and also like some people don't. And even without that, the city is getting grants from the state or federal government because we have an X amount of poor people that live in the space, right? So even you just being there kicking it, right, with your voucher is like adding to the financial infrastructure of the city. You know what I mean? So I think like everybody, not to say that because your point you're making is real, but it's like. I just want to try and expand. Like it's everybody, right, is adding value to the city, right? Like just by you being alive. Right?
You talked about like people being like pushed out of those areas when things start getting developed. Like how? You know, I'm not literally asking, but for folks who like don't understand how that occurs.
Even if you were, it's all good. I mean, so I think there's like two pieces, right? So like one, South Shore has already been the eviction capital of the county at least since like 2010. Right, so like part of it is like it is baked into the business model of a lot of these larger real estate companies, right? Like to get people to apply, you pay the application fee, you don't get the money back whether you get in the unit or not. They getting some bread off you. If you get in there, you in there. We don't care about the conditions because like someone else needs a place to stay, right? WBZ I think a couple of years ago had a really good story that looked at like by zip code, where are Black folks in the city moving to, right? And South Shore is one of those neighborhoods, right? Like it's relatively cheap. And I hate relatively in terms of like housing costs, but I'll say something about that later. But like, so I think there's all that. The second piece is like gentrification is a process and it has different stages and it can, it's not linear, right? It can go forward and go back a little bit, then jump a little more and then go back, right? The key piece is like housing is the financial infrastructure of the city, right? The most of the city money is coming from some sort of taxes or in addition to that fines and fees, right? That's why it's like really easy. The city's got like Department of Zoning, Department of Planning, Department of Housing. Like there's like whole city council committees and teams centered around like how can I get you this permit so you can buy or sell property or so you can flip this or so you can add something to there, right? Like that level of care and service does not exist for the predominantly, right, the amount of other stuff that we do because it brings in money, right? And so it doesn't really matter, who the mayor is. Like the city is going to be making its money off the backs of like housing. And so in order to do that, the city wants there to be development, right? And but at the same time, the city also wants any type of funding it can get to do stuff, right? So that's why you have HUD grants or government programs that even if we know they don't work, we like, fuck it, we getting the bread. So let's do it, right? And so you look at neighborhoods, that creates a dynamic, right, where the investment is going to go to where most of the money is. Wider communities have more money, right? So with property tax, they're going to look better and different, right? Even when you have the concept of TIFs, which is like, we're going to...
What does TIF stand for? Tell people.
Tax increment financing. So the city does TIFs is basically like, we will... as taxes increase, we're just going to use the same amount of money to do stuff in this area, and all the increase will go to the TIF. Whoa, that was quick. Yeah, that was quick. I felt good.
That was come on now.
All right, bet. And so that block of money they'll use for like development or whatever, right? So,
but it's supposed to be for that community still, but that's not always what happens.
And there's an argument that it's bad off rip because if property taxes go to fund governments and schools, even if you're using that slice of the money that is above where you set the mark, right? With inflation, things are going to continue to rise. So you're going to get less service. And then also that increase is not going to like the school, right? So that's why that's one of the not the main, but one of the reasons why CPS is jacked up. But anyway, I said that to say like, even tools like that exist, those funds actually don't end up going to things that folks need in those neighborhoods. They go to fund developments downtown, right?
Exactly,
Which further
widens that gap.
Creates the gap, right? So then comes like the business piece, right? Which is like, as a anyone who's in business, right? Like you know, if you want to funnel it down to the simplest term, like you want to buy low and sell high, right? Like you want to make money, right? Which means you have to charge more than it takes you to make or produce or acquire the thing that you're selling. And so if I could buy a building downtown for $1 million and then sell it for $1.1 million, I'm gonna make some money. That's cool. But what if I could buy a building for $200,000 and sell it for $600,000, right? Like that's way more, you know, property market, right? So that the market has already created the incentive for gentrification, right? Because it's exploitation. And so when you plop the Obama Center, right, on 62nd and Stony Island, right, everything in the vicinity, right, is now gives me the potential to make more profit than I would elsewhere, even if it's not as luxurious, even if it's not as big, right? And so in anticipation of that, I say, well, you know, I don't know when the center's done. I don't know when it's gonna pop. I'm gonna buy this thing and just sit on it, right? Do I care about the condition? No, because I want to sell it later, right? Do I care if it's vacant? No. Do I care if there are folks selling drugs inside? Like, I don't care, right? Like, I don't even live here. I'm in different time zone. I live in California. I don't care about what's going on your block, right? So it's like, it creates the incentive for things like that to happen. When that is happening, right, the city, instead of offering like, I'm just rapping, so excuse me if I just, instead of offering like real solutions, what they're gonna do is say, well, you know, we need to beautify this block. And we're gonna have a grant, and you know, we're gonna fix it up. It's gonna be real cool. And we may even let you, if you act right, remember they told you your rights, right? You got a right to shut up. You know, like if you act right, we'll let you do the community garden there if you want. We're gonna tear that shit up later and sell that land to a developer if you want to. But for now, we'll let you do it. Yeah, have fun. Yeah. We're gonna take pictures with you too. You know, I'm gonna come down, shake your hand. Anyway, so that's going on. And the value of stuff starts to increase, and eventually, like the value of that land grows, and people land bank, and then they sell it or develop on it, right?
Or it becomes a dollar lot.
Right, or it becomes a dollar lot. Right. They do things that don't actually like address the needs of folks, which is like the material needs and the cost of living, to invite new folks right into the market to increase, you know, the demand, which further increases the demand. Right. Well, that's like a phase one thing, right? Then the next phase is, you know, that can oscillate a couple times. And then eventually you get to a point where there's some reassessment on the tax base in the neighborhood or the property tax. I'm like, oh, it's increased. And then you get the real kind of like jump, right? And then it's like even those first wave folks get pushed out, right? Like I think we've seen this in like Logan Square and Wicker Park where there's a wave of folks who are not from Logan Square or Wicker Park who moved there between like 2015 and like 11 or whatever, who cannot afford to be there now, right? Because of it's gone through that cycle, right? And so this is like informal, you know, we're just talking it out, but I think like that speaks to the layers of the process. And there are so many steps in the examples we laid out where the city could intervene, right? But they don't. And so that's really a lot of the stuff that's in the ordinance, right? Like what are the programs in place to prevent that, right? And there's like 20, we could read the list if you want. I'm not gonna do it right now, but you know, like the goal, like that's the kind of the goal behind it. So yeah, that's what gentrification looks like, right? It looks like closing schools, right? Which they did in 2015, right? Schools hold people in neighborhoods, let populations increase, right? It looks like neglect. It looks like over-policing and police violence, right? Which also, you know, it's not something we talk about in the CBA campaign because it's focused on housing. But like Dixon Romeo, I'm just naming that, like, you know, over-policing does make you like, it's dangerous over here. I don't want to be here, so you leave, right? It looks like.
And that danger is also coming from the literal police.
Yeah, it's coming from,
University of Chicago.
Right. It looks like supporting programs that either don't work or only benefit those who are lucky enough to have the right amount of means, right, and not like the whole community. Like that's what gentrification looks like. It looks like a neighborhood where we know there's like an eviction housing crisis, and the city doesn't build up infrastructure, or the state, right, or the federal government to address that, right? It looks like letting HUD and public housing deteriorate. It looks like selling public housing land when we know we need it.
We need more of it.
Yeah, in a moment where we have thousands of people coming into the city that have no place to go, we are selling land that should be for public housing. And so not new arrivals don't get it, niggas don't, like no one gets it. I know that, right, and I know niggas is new arrivals too. I know like folks be like, well, they're Haitian. Like I know all that. I'm just saying like in general, the general narrative. So that's what gentrification looks like. It looks like the everyday process the city of Chicago goes through right now, right?
That's real. That's very real. So what? No, you. Why are you? It's called shit talk. So you're talking. If you wasn't talking, I would be like, for sure. We'd just be sitting here and be crickets, and they'll be like, all right, for sure. Well, this has been another episode of Shit Talks. I'm like, he didn't even talk. He just sat there and just looked at me. Oh, it was weird. So I want to ask, first of all, thank you so much for that information. I think it's very important to have that context because I think a lot of people, they think that like gentrification is another one of those like buzzwords or things that are not like, you know, I often hear a lot of people say like, why is this a bad thing? Why is this a bad thing? Like, oh, people just say gentrification is a bad thing because they want people to keep selling drugs on the corner of that street. Like, no, actually, like there are very real problems that people are facing that are not being remedied. And instead of those problems being remedied or invested in, they're just like, you know, it's kind of how, you ever seen somebody put a paper plate over a hole on a wall and then paint over it? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, they do. Like real crazy landlords, they'll put a paper plate on a wall and you know what I'm saying? Or if there's an actual hole in the wall, you just fill it with putty and then paint over it. Like that's what it feels like. Yeah. The paper plate, I'm a little too ghetto, I'm sorry.
Not ghetto, but it's different.
I done seen a lot of shit, but I've never seen a paper plate one.
You might not know it's a paper plate.
Not yet.
You might not know it's a paper plate, but once you know that
I'm going to
people
somebody's
do
building
that,
tomorrow, I might see it.
once you know people do that, you can't unsee it. And then you'll look and see something on the wall, you'll be like, that is a paper plate. Anyway. But yeah, so I also think that it's crazy that, you know, my heart is always going to forever be broken by those trees being cut down. But I think that like it's not to say like, oh, it's a motif for blah, 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 or make it some type of metaphor, but genuinely speaking, there's this like, we don't ever get nothing without like having to like go through great loss, right? Like why do we have to like lose something that's such a great resource environmentally, you know what I'm saying? Like as far as like just the general beauty of the neighborhood, but even literally like thinking about tons of like air pollutants being taken out of the air by those trees, and now that's like gone in an area where like the rates of asthma are so high. Like why do we always have to lose something to get something else? And why these white people don't have to lose something? Y'all would have found somewhere else to build it or found a way to replace that resource. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that speaks to that as well, which is why, I mean, it goes without saying that the ordinance that y'all are working on is super important. So I want to know what some more of those things that are within that ordinance. I think you touched on a few of them, but like what are some like asks that are in this ordinance?
Long-term homeowner improvement grant, so it gives them money to like help them pay to get their houses prepared in condos. And that's where like a lot of the money is going to that.
There's two, so the one is the Aero pilot, right? So for anything that's developed in the neighborhood that basically requires a percentage of the stuff is affordable, right? One thing we've seen is that landlords may let a building deteriorate or buy a building, right? Get city money or get, you know, zoning permits, you know, or get permits, right, to do some major internal stuff, push folks out up the price, right? Well, all right, if you're gonna buy the building, like you have to maintain some affordability in that, right? There's a demand around having affordable housing, be a part of. Oh, you are good. Be a part of. It's like Inception. Like it's a Zoom on this. Getting city-owned vacant lots, which there are not as many as in Woodlawn, but a nice amount in South Shore. You know, you can build a nice restaurant on the first floor. You can have, you know, your clothing shop, your like whatever you want on the first floor. But if there's more stuff there, like that, it should be affordable, right? Like it's pretty straightforward stuff, right? In terms of tenant protections, right? Ban on move-in fees, application fees, because we've just seen those be deeply, discriminatory, right? Because it's like I may charge you, you know, $500 for your application fee, but you know she was, you know, friendlier with me, so I'm gonna give her $350. Like it's like inherently bad, but also like money that you pay that you're not getting back. Yeah. That like in like some of the move-in fees that we've heard about and researched in other neighborhoods are just crazy, right? Like, you know, why am I paying $500? How much was your move-in fee?
Do you want me to tell you?
Just say it, yeah.
It was like $1,000-something.
Right. So
yeah.
To move in?
Yes.
Yeah, so
to move. I was like, to move. You paying for the move? Is where the money going? There ain't no deposit. That's yours and it's done. Like.
Right. And so to put that in context, right? The median income in the neighborhood is like 30. Is a little under 30, or I think there's a new thing that came out a couple months ago, so it might be like 30 now because there's some gentrification happening already. But like if you make $30,000, that's the median income. $1,000 just to move in. That's not the rent.
It's crazy. No,
you know what I'm saying? Like, and so when we're talking about, you know, parents who send their kids to O'Keefe, Robert A. Black, Parkside, you know what I'm saying? South Shore Fine Arts, James Madison, you know, I can name all the schools, right? Like, think about all the other expenses people have in their life. I mean, I know you literally did because you was there. It was you. But like, that's wild.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we gotta stop that. Yeah. There's, you know, tenant opportunity to purchase. So if they're, you know, if you are renting, because a lot of folks rent condos in South Shore, right? South Shore is 77% rental, but there are a lot of units that folks rent
that are owned by
a company or an individual, right. You know, your auntie, your friend. And, you know, if someone's gonna sell it, you should know. Right? And
you should have first dibs on being able
right, to be able to buy it. Right. Yeah. And so to pair with that, right, we have programs we're offering for that offer to help folks with some of that down payment assistance, right? Because it's like you can have the right to try and get it, but the reality is you need something to help you meet that, right? And
it's crazy if you've like shown that you are a good renter or whatever the case is. This should be like a pathway to be able to like.
Yeah, and I think like, you know, there are folks who I know who are in a very small group of folks who are against the ordinance, haven't read it. You know, we meet with them, they haven't read it again, and they're like, you got to promote home ownership. And what we just talked about literally is, right? Like if you were a renter and you got the opportunity
to buy
this
something,
ordinance to get a chance to buy something,
that's
then you
home
become
ownership.
Right.
Is that not home ownership?
And you stop displacement. I'm like, yeah, there are ways to promote.
Because otherwise, if the person wants to sell the condo and the person who they sell it to does not want to rent it, they want to live in it, then you don't have nowhere to live.
Right, and then you are displaced, right? And like, I'm very clear with folks, like our goal is zero displacement. Like, no, I'm like, yes, I really mean zero. Yeah. Like nobody. Yeah. What about the nobody? Yeah. Even nobody. Like that is the goal. So I can keep going through the ordinance, but I think we've given enough flavor for folks to understand. Like you can check it out at
Thank you.
Southshore CBA
.org, right?
No, it's .com.
.com.
No, it is .org.
.org.
.org. You're right.
Obama CBA .org.
So how do people like support y'all like fight for this housing ordinance? Like where are y'all at with it right now, and what does it look like for folks to be like, you know, what's going on?
95% of the Fifth Ward support. 92% of the Fifth Ward supported our referendum.
Across 14%. That's not the whole Fifth Ward, but the parts that are South Shore.
Yeah.
And Woodlawn.
Well, the parts that are in South Shore.
And Woodlawn.
In Woodlawn.
So if you go to the website that we named it before, ObamaCBA.org, and
it's gonna appear somewhere here.
Yeah, right there.
Somewhere
you
here.
Can punch
Let's all point at it.
You can punch. Punch your info in there, and somebody will follow up with you. There's also Not Me Weed's page on Instagram that you can.
Not Me Weed, yeah.
Right there. It's here again. Thank you.
Into.
Sorry if this is messing up where you normally want to put the text at, but this is where it's going to be this time.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We have a teaching, gentrification teaching and orientation, December 17th at South Shore Library from...
A time that's gonna appear right here.
The time's gonna be right here. It's from 2 to 3:30. From 2 to 3:30. I did. It's from 2 to 3:30. Right. It's from 2 to 3:30. And if not, honestly, you can call me at beep 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 beep
555.
Yeah, 555. Yeah, I think if you follow the page, you can also DM the Instagram page. Yes. I've had people message us on the Facebook page.
All the socials.
Facebook.
People
send it to my auntie.
No, listen, that's real.
Yeah, but seriously though, when I first, I was about to say when my family first came to this country, we lived in South Shore, right? And like, I think an interesting thing that my dad like described to me when we were shorties was like the idea of gentrification without having the language for it and being like, this wasn't here before, and this was here before, and this wasn't here before, and this was. And I have a friend whose family owned a house in South Shore that would not sell before it, that now somehow has sold. And I'm like, there she blows.
There was somebody who called and asked about our family house, about buying it. Yeah. And I was like, I don't know, man. I was like, how? He was like, well, what do you want for it? I was like, $1 billion.
A billion, trillion, million.
And he was like, are you sure? Are you sure that's what you want? I was like, all right, 1.5 billion. Like, what, you know, like.
Don't piss me off.
So yeah, that's happening like to folks all the time. Like people getting mail, phone calls about it, and that speaks to, I think, like your experience with your dad. Like over time, it's like this is not a new phenomenon.
You're
Like
talking about he came here in the 70s.
Yeah.
Like, the place I used to live doesn't exist anymore, and neither does the place I used to first live. So
Right.
That's real.
Right. And I think that like there's a connection between that and like, you know, all the stuff we were naming before. Like there is a cycle, right? Like you can go down the street up here and go to Greeny Green, right? People used to live there. People used to live across State Street, right?
Yeah.
And I think like, you know, communities get destroyed and like what's offered is like a museum or a documentary or like some dope art or like
You're like, my community has been destroyed, and they're like holding a camera to your face and like, talk to me.
yeah, and I'm not like sneak dissing artists or like art or like historians and things like those things matter, but I think like, you know, our goal is to like that to not be the case, right? And that requires us being really clear about what we're doing now and fighting right now.
Period. We already showed once again, but if you missed it, this is where you can support at. Here are the handles and the website. Please, like, just using you. There it is. Just using you as an example. Like everybody has their own calling, right? And everybody has their own ways that they can show up for their communities or whatever the case. Nobody's saying that you need to go out there and stand on the front line and, you know what I'm saying, get all type of stuff. But like, if you feel passionate or is led to, you know what I'm saying, be involved with the things that are going on in your community, like, you know, make that move, you know, and get involved.
Stuff you can do. We gonna find something.
Yeah, we gonna find something for you. Not me, but them. Not me, we. You know what I'm saying? Not me, we. Yeah, they right there. Period.
Beautiful. Thank y'all so much for chopping it up with us. Please make sure y'all support that ordinance, and please pay attention to what's going on in your neighborhoods, because even if you don't give a damn, it's still gonna affect you. So give a shit. Oh my gosh. Hello. Stop. Give a shit. Once again, y'all, my name is Naira. This has been another episode of Shit Talks. Peace.
Woo.